Hi, everyone. We're live. I'm Debbie Schwartz, founder of Road to College and the Paying for College 101 group. And I'm here tonight with Luanne Lee. Her company is called Your College Planning Coach. And I've done a lot of stuff with Luanne over the past few years. And she's a great resource. And I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about her background. But before we do, I see that people are turning on to watch, which is great. I'd love if people can just put in the comments where you're from, how many kids you have, what the age of your kids are. It just helps us to know who's out there, kind of what type of questions you might ask and what type of information you might want. And also to make sure that you can hear us. So just, say something in the comments, and that would be great so that we know that everything is working okay. So tonight is the second night of 3 nights of Facebook Lives that we're doing. Last night, I talked with Melissa Bassett from SoFi, and she had tons of information, explained to people about all the different loans that are out there. Tonight, Luanne is going to talk about interest rates, how you kind of analyze your loans and compare them. She's got a ton of information. And then tomorrow night, we're going to talk about how you actually apply and, anything that you need to know for that process. So great. Looks like people are signing on and telling us where they're from. Somebody, let's see, Kristen's from Maryland, Diane's from Michigan, Emily's from Rochester, New York, Michelle's from Chicago, Yuko is from New York City. Great. Tracy outside of Philadelphia. So am I. So, okay. So I'm going to start off again, introducing Luanne. And Luanne, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you help families, and then we'll get started.
Sure. Well, thank you, Debbie. Once again, you and I have known each other for a number of years. We've done the FAFSA overview for years, and it never fails. You usually catch me at the busiest time when I've been talking all day, and by the time we finish the webinar or the Zoom or however we're doing it, I have no voice. Hopefully that's not going to happen tonight because I've been talking nonstop for 3 days now. But so I saw, a couple of Northern Virginia folks in here. My office is located in Warrenton. It's home now. We've lived here for 25 years, and I got started as in college planning as a financial planner. And at one point, I was offering mortgage services, and that's when I got to see student loan debt on credit reports. And so it kind of transitioned from there. And over the years, I've become, certified as a college planning specialist. I have a designation as a college funding student loan advisor, helping, after they've graduated and how do we pay off these loans and such. But the primary focus of my practice for the last almost 15 years has been planning for college, the financial side of it, but also, how students select the colleges, their essays, the SAT prep. And, I've become kind of a hybrid. I'm very lucky to meet people like you. And other professionals over the years that I have access to software systems and such that it's really helped me to help families. And I'd say my average family, saves anywhere from 25 to 50% off the cost of what they would have paid for college. So I enjoy what I do. And I'm happy to be here and talk about, some of the options that all of these, it looks like there's quite a few people that they've got, we don't call them rising college freshmen anymore.
I know, right.
Everybody's graduated from high school, so now they're college freshmen. They just, whenever you want me to go ahead and get started.
Okay, great. I'm just going to tell people. So Luanne has a presentation. You'll be able to see us and these slides. Ask questions. put your questions in the comments. I'll try and interrupt Luanne if your question kind of is appropriate to what we're talking about. And if not, at the end, we'll probably kind of scroll back and try and answer any questions that we didn't get to. So here we go.
Okay, so Debbie, this is just, and this was my pre-COVID hair. And it is just, you can see I'm in my office here in Warrenton. Nobody's here, so it's like I have a very large personal office, but I do have my own personal office here that is my home away from home. But if anybody has any questions, they can send me an email, or if they need further information, they can register on my my calendar. I do give a complimentary consultation, especially when people have attended a workshop or a webinar like this, or a live. We have so many choices these days.
Right. Okay.
So why don't we go ahead and get started? And we're going to just start at the beginning. And I'm just going to assume that some of you probably know some of this information, and many of you don't. So I'm going to just take that so that we can help everyone that's brand new to this and they don't really know what's going on. So forgive me if some of this sounds very basic, but we're in such a mixed group that everybody can pick up a nugget or two.
Right. And bear with us, because there's just a few slides of basics, and then Luanne's going to go to kind of new information that you probably haven't seen before.
Right. So, we've all had a very challenging year, and hopefully, you're all safe and sound and washing your hands and not getting sick and such. So we're very, blessed to be here this evening. But the only good thing that has come from the COVID situation and the economic situation that we have in the country right now is interest rates have really gone down. So the federal loan rate for the federal Stafford student loans is at 2.75%. It hasn't been this low since probably 2004.
Yeah, that's what I heard. In about the lowest in 15 years.
Yep. So this rate changes every year on July 1st. So if anybody tried to do their FAFSA right now, or submitted for a loan because they didn't take it for this last semester, you're not going to get that 2.75% interest rate, because it doesn't start until after July 1st with the disbursement of the 2020-2021 calendar year. So Stafford student loan is what? As long as you filed the FAFSA, your student can get the Stafford student loans just in their name. You don't have to co-sign as a parent, but there are limits. And this is where a lot of families, they just truly didn't realize that there are going to be limits on this federal aid. And yes, it is a loan, but yes, it is considered aid. And you're just going to have to get over it, and just that is what the system is. So as a freshman, your student can get $5,500 in Stafford student loans if when you filed your FAFSA and your student aid report shows that you have financial need, then you can receive up to a $3,500 subsidized loan, which is 0% interest. The government pays that interest while your student is in is in college. That's a great option to take. Now, the rest of that is going to come in the form of a unsubsidized loan, which then is the 2.75% interest starts accruing from disbursement. But it's still a bargain when in the grand scheme of things. There is an 8.5% lifetime cap. So next year, the loan rate could be the same. It could go up. It could go down. It just depends. So every year there's going to be a new rate.
But just to clarify, Luanne, so this year the rate's 2.75. It will be 2.75 for the life of the loan that's taken out this year. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. So, typically if you take, if you get subsidized and unsubsidized loans every year, you're going to have two separate loans with your loan provider every year. And so they're going to be different interest rates, whatever the interest rate that gets determined for the new year. Now you do have that fee, which is deducted from, say, that $5,500. So take that into consideration when you're calculating, if you're getting right down to your last nickel, which if that's the case, we need to have a different talk, but you want to make sure that you take that into consideration. So I've got my little cheat sheet here. That fee is going to be a total of $58.25.
So off of the $5,500.
Correct, for the year. But then they make it more difficult because they cut it in half for each semester. So, I've learned over the years, if they can make it confusing, they're going to do everything that they can in their power to confuse you. So the standard 4 years of loans is $27,000, but they do allow an additional $4,000. But that's the maximum amount of the Stafford student loans. Can you go to the next slide,
Actually,
Debbie?
before we do, there's one question, and here, let me just show. So Tracy says, how do you know if your FAFSA indicated need? That's probably a whole discussion, but maybe you could just explain how you might figure out whether you get the unsubsidized versus the subsidized loans.
So when your FAFSA comes up with your expected family contribution. And so when you've calculated the information that they require and you hit submit, it comes up with a page that most people miss and close. But that page is telling you what your EFC is, your expected family contribution. It usually starts with a 0, which is why most people just dismiss it. But it's going to let you know just what the government thinks that you can pay out of pocket before receiving any financial need-based aid that's coming from them in the form of Pell Grants or subsidized loans. So the reality is that most of us are not going to fall into that need category in many cases. It's just nobody is satisfied with their EFC, and even those that come up with a 0 EFC, their income is so low that you have to put that into perspective as well. But I want to just stress that if you have a 0 EFC, that does not mean that you're not going to pay anything for college. So it goes into a lot more depth, but hopefully so you'll see when you get your student, your SAR, when you submit the FAFSA, it comes up, your student aid report. It will tell you should be expected to receive a Pell Grant, or you should qualify for, the $5,500. And then it's just going to be a matter of the school will let you know what the breakdown is, because it's going to depend on the cost of attendance minus your EFC, how the school addresses need, and if you will qualify for any, grants or the Pell Grant or the subsidized loan.
And that's why it could be with the same student, but at two different schools. One school, they might get subsidized loans, and another school, they might not, or they'll get different amounts.
Correct.
Okay, so there's two questions. Maybe let's see, about the extra $4,000. So they just want to know, how do you get that? Is that because you're going into a fifth year, or is there some other qualifications for getting the $4,000?
So that's a perfect example of the ability to get the additional 4,000. Now, this 4,000 that is in addition is not the 4,000 that if a parent doesn't qualify or gets denied for the Parent Plus loan, the student can get an additional 4,000. This is completely different.
Okay,
So
and then yeah, that's helpful. And oh, okay, this is okay. We're getting into some FAFSA questions, but I think it's important because hopefully, if you haven't filled out FAFSA, you still can. And so, Andrea is asking, should I do FAFSA with my information or my daughter's information?
Well, actually, you need to use both of your information. Your income and assets, your daughter's income and assets, if she has any. And, you know, a lot of people say, well, I don't have any assets. If you have a checking account and a savings account that has $5 in it, you have an asset. If you have money under your mattress, you have to disclose that. So asset is just a fancy word for whatever cash that you have. It doesn't matter where it is. So, you know, people think, I don't have any investments, I don't have any mutual funds, so I don't have any assets. But they've got, you know, $5,000 sitting in their savings account. That is an asset that you have to disclose.
Right. So, Andrea, you follow the directions, and you're going to need information from both you and your daughter. Okay, yep. Last question, then we're going to go to the next slide. Only because I've seen this a few times. People are kind of confused about, they took out, Michelle clarified it's a Stafford loan. So her student took out the federal loan, and they're not receiving statements. They don't know where to go to get more information after they think that they've taken out the loan.
So your daughter needs to log into the federal student aid system and with her FSA ID. And it will bring up her who her lender is, and she'll be able to see, okay, these are the loans that I have, and if they're subsidized, unsubsidized, when she's expected to start repayment and that sort of thing.
I think what's confusing is they don't realize they have to go in under the student's FSA ID.
Correct. Everything that, you know, and for the lady who asked about, you know, do I file my information or my daughter's? The FAFSA is the student's. So the FAFSA belongs to the student. You as a parent have to have an FSA ID to be able to electronically sign and submit and enter your information. But the FAFSA is in the name of the student, not of the parent. So don't put your information, you know, your name and everything at the start of filing the FAFSA. It's the students.
Okay, one last question, because these are good questions. And guys, we're only on page 1 of the presentation. Okay, here's
short slides.
But this is a good question that I know can apply to a lot of people. If we have this coming year covered, but not next year, and with the rates considered so low, should we be taking out a loan this year and see what happens to rates next year? That's a question that people are kind of always thinking. Like, the rates are good. You might have the money to pay for this year, but should you still take out the loan because you want to get these good rates and you don't know what the rates are going to be next year?
Excellent question. Sorry. I have been having consultations with all of my clients this year, even those that, you know, they're not freshmen, they're maybe in their junior year or such. The interest rate on the Stafford loans is so low. People have had massive losses, volatility in the market and such. If you've experienced losses and you remove money from those funds, you've now cemented those losses. So if you need some time to recoup and you know, wait for a later time, this is a great opportunity to help offset some of that. So you just have to look And it's not a blanket statement, but this is a great opportunity to take advantage of. And if you don't want your kids to pay these loans, I think they should all have some skin in the game. I am not the loan police. I'm not averse to loans. I am averse to loans that are so beyond reason, they'll never get paid back. But that's a different topic.
Okay.
So that this is a good opportunity.
Okay, we're moving on.
So the PLUS loan is the parent loan for undergraduate student, or what I refer to as predatory lending by our US government. That's what PLUS stands for, because look at the origination fee. It's over 4%. If I was still doing mortgage services like I did back in, the early 2000s, when they were charging 4 and 5% origination fees and people didn't even know, I would get my hand slapped right now. I would probably get fined. But our government is charging this fee for parents to be able to help their kids pay for college. So that's my biggest con about the PLUS loans. But just like the student loan, the interest rate for the parent loan is very reasonable. If you've got average credit scores, 5.3%, it's, I don't know when it was this low. Another con is it's completely unsubsidized. So the interest starts accruing from day one. And you do have, there are everything's got a plus and a minus. A lifetime cap of 10.5%. So it can go up, but just like the student loan, every year your loan stays the same interest rate. So it's not going to change. Now, credit score driven, what does that mean? It means that, yes, they're going to look at your credit, but what they're looking for is, do you have a bankruptcy? Are you late on payments? Do you have a tax lien? Those are pretty much the 3 factors that determine when the government will deny a parent's application for the PLUS loan. And so when the parent has applied and they get denied, then the student is allowed an additional $4,000, but it's also in an unsubsidized loan. So, and then that's it. So you've got to really know what your, get your financial house in order. For those of you, I've seen that some have younger children. Now is a good time to get your financial house in order. For those of you that, you've got a couple of, you don't have any dings on your credit, you don't have the best credit score, but you don't have any, it's because of, high loan balance or such. You can get qualified for that loan. You don't even have to have the ability, the income to pay off that loan. Whereas a private lender would definitely turn you away. So that's a kind of a plus and a minus.
Right.
Because for one, parents are scrambling at this time. Oh my gosh, I can't believe college is so expensive. Why didn't I know this? I've lost all of my savings. I promised my child. So, they will go ahead and turn to loans. And so they'll take on the PLUS loan and say, well, we'll figure it out later, how to pay it back. Not a good choice in my mind, but everybody's different. Any questions on this?
Luanne, there's a few, but I'm just going to pick one because you mentioned this. Look, do you have an idea to give people, like, what, when you say average, like, credit score, do you have a sense of like what credit scores people would need to get? Really, I guess, go to the private loan market and maybe get a rate that's better than the Parent Plus loan?
Why don't we address that when we get to the private loans?
Okay.
As far as credit scores for the PLUS loan, I mean, you can be in, 600 and still get qualified as long as you don't have any, outstanding bills, a tax lien, a bankruptcy, and late payments.
Okay. Oops, wrong way. Sorry. Okay.
So this is just a snapshot. Everybody's so concerned about interest rates. They're going to change on a day-to-day basis. And you've got your variable rates and your fixed rates. And I see on the Facebook page, in the group, people are saying, oh, geez, I got 3.4%. And somebody else says, oh my gosh, I can't believe they quoted us 7.9. How can that be? It's individual. It's not a fixed rate like the federal loans where everybody gets the same rate. These private loans are on what your individual situation is, your income, your assets, your debt ratio, your credit score plays a major part of this. What kind of job you have. I mean, they're assessing the risk. Is this person going to be in a position to pay off this loan?
So people always ask, the question I see all the time is, where can I get, where do I get the best rate? And that's such a hard question there is no one answer. And the answer is really, you're going to need to apply or pre-qualify, and we can talk about that, to several different lenders, because as Luanne's saying, they all kind of have a different way that they're going to calculate what rate they gave you and they gave somebody else. So just because somebody else got a great rate, that doesn't mean you're going to get that same rate.
Correct. You want to go to the next slide?
Yep. Sorry. I have a new mouse, so I'm not going in the right direction.
So, here's an example, a number of lenders, and there's a lot more. And I'm not saying I'm just a fan of these. It was just, a screenshot. Debbie receives information from these lenders with, the most up-to-date interest rates and such. So you can see everybody, the 1.49, wow. But that's a variable interest rate. And you probably you've got to have a 850 credit score and, gold in your
the other thing, Luanne, and we learned this last night from Melissa at SoFi, was that those low rates, they're definitely possible to get. Besides having to have like a top-notch credit score, those rates are given for the people who pick the payment plans where they're paying back immediately and they're paying out the shortest length of time. Correct. So they have this. It's all about risk to the lender. So the person who's paying the most, starting immediately, and finishing up their loan over the shortest amount of time is being the least risky to that lender. So that's why they're going to get the better rate.
So they're being rewarded,
right,
in a sense. And if you note the small print that you have to get a magnifying glass for, variable rates as of 6/16/20, fixed rates may vary. It's always going to vary. It's going to change. That's the one thing that oh my gosh, I hated when I did mortgage loans. The very last loan that I ever did was right at the meltdown. I had a perfect score client. All they were doing was a fixed rate refi. They weren't taking any cash out. They had perfects, and the terms changed 3 times in one day. And I thought, I can't take this stress anymore. So go ahead and go to the next one. So like what Debbie was saying, you have to do a deeper dive. You want to know what the terms are, what the interest rate is, what's the monthly payment, what are the borrower rewards, do they have student loan deferment options, and the total cost of the loan. And so luckily, all of these lenders have got, built-in calculators that make it really easy for you to find that information out. Now, you can get to the calculator, you're not going to find out exactly what it is for you, then you're taking the next steps. You have to input your information, and go forward and make a formal application. So one thing that you want to be aware of when you start to look at private loan options is you want to try to look at do your due diligence first to find out which ones, offer a, 0.25% because you do automatic payments or such. And then, pick 2 or 3 lenders or such and apply at the same time so that you're not going to get your credit score dinged more than just looking at one loan.
That's what this was Anne's question. Does it hurt my credit score to apply to several lenders to get the best rate?
You want to do it within the same time period. So, typically they say, if you're out car shopping or shopping for a mortgage or such, any queries from lenders that are within the 30 days, if it's the same type of lender, it's only going to count for like one credit score pull.
So they know, the credit bureaus know that people are shopping for rates because they're kind of applying to the different lenders for the same type of loan. And so they kind of give that leeway that they're only going to count it as like one credit pull because they know that people are looking at different lenders. So I just wanted, actually, Luanne, you don't necessarily have it up here as something to people should look into, but we can talk about it. And that's cosigner release. And the specific requirements related to that.
So go to the next slide with where it talks about the disclosures. And so this is where I just picked College Ave just because their disclosure fit in the screenshot. Some of them were longer, and I just couldn't fit all the information. So this is where you want to find out, do they give an interest rate deduction? Do they have different terms of repayment? Do they have a cosigner release? Well, that is the biggest thing that people say, well, I'm never going to apply to Discover because they don't give a cosigner release. I'm doing such and such loan because they're going to release my student's loan in 12 months. I'm going to tell you, I was on a webinar with Mark Kantrowitz, who is the guru as far as all things student loan related and whatnot. And the average release rate for private lenders is less than 10%. Because what they're going to do, it depends on what their criteria is. So some will say 12 months of on-time payment, 24 months, 36 months. Never can a payment be late. But then they're going to look at, well, does the student, are they earning enough income, and is their debt ratio to the point where the lender is going to take the risk of just taking that cosigner, which is you, the parent, off of that loan? And in many cases, that is not going to happen. So if that is the only reason that you're choosing a lender, or the primary reason, you want to take a really strong look at what the major that your student is studying at school, their career path, and their income expectations. Because if they're not earning enough money to be able to take that loan balance on their own, you're still going to be stuck as a cosigner, and it's still going to be on your credit report.
Yeah, I saw, and I honestly can't remember which lender, but I was looking at all the different requirements the other day, and one lender spelled it out pretty clearly and said something about a student needs to have a salary or an income that's at least 50% of the total student loan. So, depending on, how much you're going to borrow, that student has to have that 50% in income before as one of the criteria to potentially release the cosigner.
Correct. So that is a real consideration that you have to have on the table. Am I willing to have this debt on my credit report for 10 years or longer? If you're looking at, geez, I'm going to have to refinance my mortgage or buy a new home or a new car or such, you need to take those things into consideration before you co-sign and add that debt onto, your credit report.
Okay.
And, I'm a geeky person. So, I was doing these slides at 4:00 this morning. I just go out and I find something that's simple, easy to explain. This is at bizrate.com.
No, Bankrate.
Or Bankrate, sorry.
Yeah.
4:00. But bankrate.com. And there's a ton of calculators out there. But, the loan amount, $25,000. The standard repayment time is 10 years for federal and private loans. So that's 120 months with a 4% interest rate. The monthly payment is $253.11 per month for 10 years. Now, the interest that it gets tacked on is almost $5,400, which, you're paying somebody because you didn't have the money. So there's got to be a cost to it. Debbie, if you can go to the next slide. But in this case, you wanted a lower payment. So now you extend it out to 20 years, 240 months, same interest rate. But now the interest that was paid over that time, that additional 10 years, is over $11,000. So, the length of the loan is going to be a primary factor on how much that you're going to pay overall. Now, some lenders will give you a lower interest rate if you decide, and I'm talking private lenders, if you say, well, I'm going to pay this off in 5 years. And I'm going to have it automatically debited from my account. So they'll offer you those rewards, lesser of an interest rate, and that 0.025 because you're setting it up automatically. But you're going to have a much higher payment, but you're going to be paying overall a lot less interest. So you have to look at what's in your budget.
So Kim's asking, I don't know if you know, are there early payment penalties if you end up paying off the loan sooner than what you originally took it out for?
I haven't seen anybody that has.
I was going to say, I haven't really seen any lender that will penalize you for paying it off. They're happy to have you pay it off early.
Yep. Because they're still getting their money. Oh, see, I took this out of my, when you send it back. So this is just another calculator. I don't even remember where I got it from, but some people like graphs instead of just print. So, it's just the same information, just presented differently.
So the point is, Luanne found this on bankrate.com. I can almost guarantee you that all the private lenders have some calculator on their sites. You can go use all their tools. You don't have to ever necessarily apply to the lender, but use the information on their site, use their tools to kind of project out, all these different scenarios that Luanne's talking about, and look at it over 4 years at a minimum. So
that's where we'll get to next. But before you move this, also at studentaid.gov.
Yeah.
There's an incredible calculator that's built right in that you can input, all the different federal loans. You can add your private loans, the interest rates, what your income expectations are. What do you think your rent and whatnot is going to be once you've graduated? And it will help give you a good idea of what your payments will be, and are you going to be able to make those standard 10-year repayments? And you can do that for the parents as well as for the student.
So I'm just showing this question. This person saying, I've seen the calculators, but they don't always consider different repayment methods, which makes it hard to compare. I will research after. I know, honestly, I have seen the calculators on some lender sites that do give you these different options. So they are out there. Maybe not every lender doesn't have it, but there are some that do. And I will share the link as soon as we finish up.
So the question that I have for you, and is it Anne, is, are you talking about the private loans or the federal loans that have the income-based repayment options? So
I think he's talking about the private loans, because he's saying about paying off immediately, interest only, or deferred. But that could still apply to both.
Right.
Oh, he said private loans.
I mean, the private, it's not going to be any different. It's there as a guide. So if you're going to decide, all right, I want to prepay or send extra payments and such, you just talk it over with your lender. And you must talk it over with your lender to find out how are they going to apply those extra payments. And when you're talking about the interest only payments, are you talking about that you've taken, a variable interest rate or interest only loan, or that can you just pay the interest for less than the cost of what the principal and interest payment is for the loan? Because it's my understanding I don't know of any private lender that is going to let you do that. You can do that with the federal plus loan and the federal student loans once you're in repayment.
So we have a few questions about co-signing. Yuko is saying, is being a co-signer of a student loan negative for the parent's credit score?
Well, you're now have that amount that's going to be on your credit, and it's going to address, it's going to have an impact on your debt ratio. So yes, if you've just taken on, say, a $50,000 loan, it's going to have an impact on your credit score.
And Nancy's asking, when the parent co-signs for a student, will the student's credit score go up when it's all paid off, or will it only affect the parent's score? Good question.
If it's a private student loan, it's going to have an impact on both the student, because the loan is in the student's name. So this is their loan, but it's your loan too, because you've co-signed it.
Okay. Should we go to the next slide?
Yes. Okay. So this is just an example, kind of a real life example, and a client that I was working with this year. So we're Virginia residents. The student has accepted at University of Maryland, College Park. So cost of attendance, roughly $53,000 for out of state. Instead of going to George Mason or James Madison, but that's okay. That's what it's actually closer to home in a sense of where they live. And so they wanted him a little bit closer. So can you go to the next slide?
Yeah.
So Debbie, go back one slide, back to that slide, please. So the point I want to make here is the cost of attendance column here. Most families are just focusing on that first year. That's all that's in your mind. how are we going to go ahead and submit for the loans for this, 20,000 or 15,000 or whatever. Phew, we got approved, and life is good. But what you've got to take into consideration is the next slide, which is the projected 4-year cost. So in this example, the 4 years, and it's taking into account each year, the cost has risen, 2 to 3%. So it's within, in my mind, I'd rather see, the calculation at, 4% to be more within reason. But this is the reality for this family. If the student graduates in 4 years, their cost of attendance for those 4 years is going to be about $225,000. So I made this example to show what that major impact is. So for somebody that they don't have, if you see over here on the side, this is the total debt and how you will pay. I've indicated there is no college fund, and the parents haven't decided that they're going to make an annual contribution.
So just to be clear, when you say college fund, this family hadn't saved anything for college, so they didn't have any 529s, or they didn't have any money set aside.
So for this example, yes.
Yes. Okay.
So I took some information, but then revised it. So just imagine you've accepted to a school. You find out that it's $50,000 a year. Well, we'll just take on loans. We'll be able to manage that. You have to look at the 4-year plan. Now, Debbie, go back again, please. Sorry. So the 4-year graduation rate at College Park is 65%. Now, if you factor in what's happening in the world right now with COVID, are we going to have, more online study? Are kids going to get sent home again, whatnot? The likelihood that we're not going to be able to stay on track for a 4-year graduation is pretty likely. So I would dare say, to add a 5th year just to be safe. But in this case, I didn't do that. I just thought about that earlier. So you don't have any money set aside that you've indicated that you're going to pull out for college. Because if you did, then those figures would be here, and it would reduce what your projected debt and cash flow would be. But for this scenario, there's no college fund. We're not going to pay anything to the school. We're broke, and we need to take out loans. So it indicates the Stafford Loans, $27,000, as well as, okay, then we have to come up with additional resources. Go ahead.
No, so Marjorie was asking, and I'm going to go back to this slide, so I think that's what she was looking at, saying here, and this is a hypothetical student, but wouldn't he have gotten 76% of need met?
Good question. This family, their EFC was more than the cost of attendance. So, for this scenario, a lot of people, their EFC is higher than their cost of attendance. So when that happens, there's no need. So, and a school like College Park, they don't give 100% of need. And, most state schools are not. Or let's just say UVA. UVA says, yes, we will meet 100% of financial need, but the bulk of that is in the form of loans. They offer you, yes, you can get a Parent Plus loan and the federal student loans. And, we might give you a little bit of Pell Grant money, but that's pretty much it. Does that answer the question?
Yes, yes, definitely.
So it's a good question.
Yeah. Okay, should it go on?
Was that the next slide?
Yeah, but you want me to go to the next one?
No. So this is basically just saying, there was no gift aid. There's no financial aid gap because their EFC was larger than the cost of attendance. So this EFC adjusted here just means that they've taken into account the federal Stafford loans that makes up the cost of attendance and what the parents will need to come out of pocket with to pay the full cost of attendance. So we have, once again, here's the projected financial award, which shows there's no gift aid. The self-help in the yellow at the bottom, self-help is loans.
Right.
There's no financial aid gap. And this is the adjusted family contribution in the blue. And then the red is warning, warning. This is where you have got to come up with those additional resources. So go on to the next. So this is just showing you for the student, if he takes the 27,000, the Stafford loan, so the 4.5% was what the interest rate was on the Stafford loans for this past year. So this is of course is going to change a bit each year. And so once the student graduates, you're going to have those individual loans that have the different interest rates. So we're just kind of taking pretty much a very close guesstimate approximation. So for the standard 10-year repayment, if all of that 27,000 was at the 4.52%, the monthly payment for the student would be $281 per month for 10 years. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Now we get into the parents. So whether they're going to take out a PLUS loan, possibly tap into home equity or the private loans. It's all going to be determined on what the current rate is and what the repayment plan is going to be. So this is taking into, the assumption that, okay, we're going to do the standard 10-year repayment. This was the interest rate for this past year for the PLUS loan. So if that total figure of, and I forget the figure, if you can go back, Debbie, I'm sorry, of $194,782. I mean, that just gives me the shivers for a 4-year undergrad degree. So if that was the case, mom and dad are going to be paying $2,270 per month for 10 years before that is paid off. And, yes, can you get a home equity loan for less than this? Right now, yes, you can. This is just kind of giving you an example. So even with a home equity line, if you have told the lender, okay, I want to set this up in a 10-year repayment, you're still looking at a $2,000 a month payment. And then the same thing with the private loans. It's going to depend on the interest rate. But, that standard 10-year repayment, depending on the amount that you borrow, is going to produce a pretty hefty monthly figure for at least 10 years. Now, with the PLUS loans, you have the ability to extend that out to 20 or 25 years. Even the parent can do this. But what does it do? It's going to just multiply exponentially how much more interest and your total balance over the course of that time to bring, your monthly payment down. Any questions, Debbie?
Not yet. I think people are just absorbing it all.
Are you in shock?
Yeah,
Everybody,
exactly.
they left their screen and went to open up a bottle of wine.
Right. But I know it's kind of scary, but this is the analysis, and I don't even like to use the word analysis to scare people, but this is kind of the thinking and the numbers that everybody should run through.
It's reality. This is the reality check. So if you go back again and again and again and again. So let's just say that you did have a college fund that you're pulling from, maybe it's $20,000 a year, and you're going to make a, monthly or quarterly contribution ongoing from your discretionary income or from your paycheck. This is set up to show that, so that it shows, okay, now we only have to borrow X amount or whatever the case is. So this is very fluid. I wanted to show you kind of scenarios that I see every week of parents that had no idea that the cost of college is as much as it is. They don't have any savings, and they're choosing schools that are so unaffordable because they feel that that's the only option that their child is going to have for a successful life. And it's a different webinar.
Right.
You definitely have options.
But I just want to point out, and I don't know if there's anybody who's watching who kind of has slightly younger kids, meaning like maybe you have a 9th grader, 10th grader, maybe you're even in middle school. But that's why if you have the time, meaning, the time from where you are now versus when your child's going to go to college, it's important to do a few things. One is find out what your credit score is. If you've got 2 years before your child's going to college and you find out what your credit score is and it's not maybe as good as it could be, then work on it. Because as you can see, if you're going to have to borrow, any improvement in your credit score will bring down the interest rate. So that will be beneficial to you. Of course, it's beneficial for student loans, but it will be beneficial for any other, credit product that you have to apply for. So that's one thing. Work on your credit. Of course, we all get to the point, and where you have a high school student and you look back and you say, sure, it would have been nice if I've saved. You can't go backwards. So you are where you are with whatever savings you have. But the second thing is you can still look at your family budget. Is there anything in the next year, 2 years, even 6 months that you can change and squeeze out to put aside that money and use that towards college? So there's savings, which is kind of in the past, and you may or may not have done it, but there is kind of your current life, and is there anything that you can change about it to potentially get more money to cash flow and put towards college? And the third thing is your credit score. So these are all kind of lessons that hopefully, if there's people watching that you have a little bit more time, that you can take away and start working on.
It's getting your financial house in order as soon as possible is going to do nothing but be a benefit. My goal when I started my financial practice was to meet families young enough that I can share with them, how to save for their retirement, how to save for college, and, just be efficient and whatnot. And the most common statement that I get from people is, I wish we had met you earlier. And so for those of you that either you're on here and you've got younger children, or you have family members or neighbors or such, please, share this information, help your neighbors to maybe not get into the same position that you might be looking at, or somebody that for this particular family, they're fine. They're not taking on these loans. The dad has got, he's got a great job. He's got great savings and whatnot. And, but he still listened to me, and he's going to have his son have some skin in the game and take on the federal student loans. And if he does exceptionally well, he's going to pay the interest as they go along. So if you pay the interest on your students' federal loans each year, they're going to start out with just the principal balance when they graduate, and now they're working and they can pay off those loans. And somebody I saw somewhere in the thread, a woman mentioned, I added my son to my credit card to help improve his scores. So paying off these federal student loans, they've got some skin in the game, but it's also going to help them improve, their scores, especially if they're paying on time. Look for some little silver linings in all of this.
So Luanne, is a quick question. This is just about this example. Do you know of the example that you shared, the payments were being made during college, or were the payments just started after college?
This was after college. And so, good question. If you can, let's just say you are taking on, some private lenders expect you to start paying right away. You're going to get better interest rate if you indicate that you're going to start paying right away. If you're going to wait until your student graduates, it's going to reflect in your interest rate, but that interest is also going to be accruing. The same thing with the federal plus loan. If you're not making payments right away, you can defer that until they graduate, but at what cost? I mean, it's going to be, an enormous amount of interest that is going to capitalize. And so what it means by capitalizing is when they finally have to start making those repayments, the interest that has built up over the years is now going to get added to the principal balance of the loan. And the interest that you're now accruing, you're going to be paying interest. You're going to get charged interest on top of interest on top of principal. And all it's going to do is, extend the amount of your payoff.
Dawn's asking, in conjunction with a parent loan, can you get financial help from grandparents, or are they allowed to provide funds without penalty?
So it depends on, the grandparents, as far as if they've got a 529 plan for your child, and you're going to pull money from that in the freshman and sophomore year of college. You have to indicate that that's income to the student when you file the FAFSA. So the best way of using those grandparent 529 plans is once the student starts their junior spring session of their junior year, because you're not going to, the next FAFSA that you're going to do, that income is not going to be showing up on the FAFSA. If you have to use that money, if that was your part of your plan, then have your parents transfer those 529 funds into your name, and then it will just count as a parent asset, which is assessed at a much less cost. Your income is assessed anywhere from 27 to 49% on the dollar. Your assets are assessed at 5.64%, so considerably less. If your grandparents, say your parents, they're just giving you cash, have them give it to you to in turn pay the tuition bill, but don't have that money sitting in your account when you go to file your FAFSA, or if you have to file the CSS profile again as well. So you have to just use it strategically so it doesn't end up hurting you in the short term.
So this is a good question, and we maybe can't get into a lot of the details on this, but So Karen's asking, if you take out the Parent Plus loan, can that be put in the student's name once they graduate? No.
No. Unfortunately, no. So it's in your name. Now, you can have an agreement with your student that, hey, I'm taking this on, but this is going to be your payment. Well, when they graduate, and let's just say, and I've seen this many times, they aren't earning enough to make those payments, and they stop making the payments. They're coming after you because that's your debt. You are the only one that's responsible for that loan. The only time that you can put the loan into the student's name is if you take it completely out of the federal system and refinance it into a private loan.
Right. Luanne and I actually were talking about this before we started. There's a lot of information kind of related about that, but it's worthwhile to kind of know the pros and cons, but it's like a whole, probably another, 30-minute conversation.
Right.
But, so I think the question is a good question. You may not like the answer, but it's good to ask that question so that you know what you can and can't do.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to show this question really for like the last part of, just to confirm. This person's asking, can we pay the interest on federal loans, as soon as they're dispersed? And how do we do that? I think people are confused about, are they going to get a statement, or where do they see that information?
Okay, this is 2020. Nobody wants to send out paper statements anymore. And especially the student loan lenders, they're not sending anything to you because this is the student's debt. So you log in. So if you want to make extra payments on the interest, you have to, not you, but your student needs to contact their student loan servicer and find out what the steps are. And some of them make it pretty easy, and some of them make it very difficult. So, it's not a cookie cutter answer. So it is very wise to pay the interest on your students' federal loans so that when they graduate, they're starting off at, ground zero in a sense. But you have to work it out with the loan servicer. I've seen cases where the extra payments were not applied to the interest. The interest is what you have to pay off first before the principal. So the interest just continued to accrue, and the little bit that was being applied got applied to the principal. And, it was like there weren't any payments that were made. So you have to be very cautious on getting it set up the right way.
Okay. So how about this one last topic? Because I think people should think about this as well. Can you discuss the pros and cons of the HELOC versus a private loan?
So the pros and cons is you need to look at your financial situation, run all the numbers, put blinders on so that you're not listening to everybody that says you should never touch your mortgage or whatever. You just look at the facts. And what are the facts? The interest rate is going to be this, the payment is going to be this. The interest rate is on the private loan is going to be this, and the payment is going to be this. You have to assess it for what's going to fit into your financial situation. Money sitting inside the walls of a mortgage, the walls of a building, you're looking at it, this is my home. The bank is just, hey, this is a mortgage, no big deal. It's the laziest asset that you have. So it's, once again, there's no cookie cutter answer. Every family has got to look at their financial situation, look at the pros and cons of Do I get a HELOC? Do I refinance? Do I take private loans? Do I take plus loans? Everybody is going to be different. So you have to do what's right for your family, and don't mention it to anybody because it's none of their business.
But it's a good question, and it's a fair alternative to consider. And I guess Luanne and I actually have the same philosophy, and she's kind of commenting about don't listen to anybody else, because sometimes out there people are very vigilant in their opinions, and and I can appreciate, people wanting to, graduate completely debt free. Of course, that is everybody's goal. It just may not be everybody's reality. And so then you just have to manage what your reality is and how much, you can handle. And the same thing goes for, whether or not you want to, borrow against your home as an alternative to pay for college. I personally don't think it's a bad idea, but it depends on your situation.
Absolutely. It depends is my most common statement that I make. I'm not trying to be vague, but everybody's situation is different.
Okay, well, you see, Luanne, we're actually almost at an hour and 15 minutes, and you said, "Oh, I just have a few slides."
Oh my God. Okay, what is there another slide here?
Oh, yes, you have a lot more slides, but let's see. Oops, sorry. Let's see.
We went backwards. That's right. Oh, no. Go. Okay. I want to go forward. You're good. Okay. This is just a reality check. So this is a current client of mine that I met. She's a teacher. And so her income, $53,000. That is her teacher income in addition to a part-time job that she has. So we all know teachers don't get paid for what they're worth. And then her husband's income. Go to the next slide. She graduated 6 years ago. She went to community college, transferred to George Mason, finished her bachelor's, got her master's degree at George Mason. So the total amount of her subsidized loans and unsubsidized loans, $69,000. She worked while she was going to school. She was paying some costs, but she ended up with debt. Thankfully, her husband doesn't have any student loan debt. He didn't go to college, but look at his income compared to hers. Let's go to the next slide. So the reality is, when I met her, and I'm not going to get into the weeds with this. Debbie and I are going to go ahead and put together another webinar specifically on income-based repayment plans and whatnot. But just a quick snapshot. When I met her, her payment was $787 per month. She's been paying on that loan for 4 years, and pretty much it hasn't moved. Why? Because she's in an income-based repayment plan, the pay as you earn, and she qualifies for the public student loan forgiveness, which is set for teachers and people working for nonprofits and whatnot. So that at the end of 10 years, whatever balance is left is forgiven without any taxable consequences. So it's a reward for those that go into a career that is in public service or nonprofits, teachers, and such. They know that they're not, going to make a great income, but they're out there serving the public. But the reality is that's a pretty hefty monthly payment for somebody that's in a income-based repayment plan, which means that she's not even touching the interest before the principal. So if you go to the next slide, and this is what we're going to be discussing, because there's so many different income-based repayment plans. In her case, we were able to take that $787 per month and reduce it to $181 per month. Within the guidelines, thankfully, she, for the 4 years that she has been paying on this loan, she was doing what she needed to do each year to qualify, to stay qualified for the public student loan forgiveness. You know, we've all heard the horror stories of people that paid on their loans for almost 10 years. And once the program finally had their first time where people were going to, get their loans forgiven, 98% of the people that thought they were going to get their loans forgiven were not doing what was necessary to stay qualified. Luckily, excuse me, this young woman was spot on, but she was very nervous. She said, I don't really trust this program and such. So we went through all the steps to make sure that she was on track, talked to the loan provider and whatnot. Their payment, they're saving $600 per month. That's $7,200 a year. She has 6 years left to qualify, because she took almost 2 years off for maternity leave and whatnot. She's got 2 little kids. But what an impact is this going to make on this young family's life? That's over $43,000 that is going to be in their accounts instead of being paid back to the government, and it still would not have paid off her loan. So there's, we're all talking about, well, what loan providers, do we go private, do we go public and whatnot? You have to look beyond, so you've got to look even beyond the 4 years. What kind of careers are your students, are they going to be going into, that they're, one, going to be able to afford their full 10-year payments? Are they going to have to go into some of these, income-based repayment plans? Because it's only those that work for the school system or, nonprofits and whatnot. There's only certain occupations that will qualify for the public student loan forgiveness. But even parents that take on Parent Plus loans, as long as they're still staying within the world of the federal loans, they can go into income-based repayment plans. And it's going to help reduce your overall payments and cost. But at the end, you're going to have a tax bill, so that you need to plan for that, so that you've got that money set aside to be able to pay the tax consequences.
So this is a great example. I mean, amazing.
This is
Luanne, yeah, real life that you could help this teacher. I mean, that's a huge, difference in their life. And it's also just like a peek for a lot of the families that are on here, a kind of peek into the future of, kind of the next set of decisions or next set of things you have to learn is once your student has graduated, what the options are for paying off. But as Luanne said, we've talked about, we're going to kind of set something up in the next, in the near future about starting to teach these things, because it's also helpful to learn them now, as a lot of decisions are being made, which will impact what the options are after your student graduates.
It's just part of the planning process. And I'm going to give you one tip. If there are any parents here that are teachers, and let's just say this is your one and only child, they graduate in 4 years. If you take the Parent Plus loan as a teacher, when your child graduates, those Parent Plus loans, you can qualify for public student loan forgiveness and an income-based repayment plan. so that you can minimize, possibly, it's going to depend on a lot of factors, but somebody that's a teacher, the key is that you have to continue staying as a teacher for 10 years after your student has graduated. So I've had a number of clients over the years that could benefit from that, but they said, well, I plan on retiring when in 13 years. So you know what? For the cost of what you would save, I think I might choose to work a little bit longer.
Right.
So, it's just you just have to look further on down the track to see what kind of things that you can take that are strategic to help you and your family.
And actually, that's that's the key word, Luanne, is strategic. It's being strategic in the admissions process, about the schools your student applies to. It's being strategic in understanding all this information and making the decisions that are right for your family for loans. It's being strategic in understanding about the repayment plans that Luanne is talking about. And if you know that information ahead of time, you can make the right decisions now. So I hope that, we are trying to provide an insight, or just provide information to everybody about the things that you should start learning about, and information you should have and questions you should ask before you make a final decision. Okay, well, thank you so much, Luanne. This was a ton of information. I hope everybody who's watched can sleep tonight, but you can. And we're just going to keep plugging away with sharing this type of information and asking and answering your questions, because this is June. People still have time to be learning about loans before they have to make decisions, but you have to start acting now. You have to start, researching and really pulling all this information together and doing some of the, math that Luanne shared tonight. So this is recorded if you want to go back and watch it, because maybe some of the information went too fast. If you want to share it with somebody else, it lives on the Road to College Facebook page. If you guys are on the Road to College email list, I always send out a link to this information. And that's it. And come back tonight. Tomorrow night is the last night. And again, we're going to go into the details about how you actually apply, how you actually apply for the federal loans, how you apply for the private loans. And again, it's just the nitty gritty so that people have all the information that they need to have. Okay. Good night, everybody.
Well, good night, everyone, and good luck to you. And Debbie, I have my voice.
I know. Okay, take care.
Good night, all. All right. Do I just click on